Picture
How old
this.
are they?
A woman draped in designer labels worth more than most Americans earn in a year struts into a courtroom like she owns the building. She laughs. Actually laughs directly in the judge's face. She throws her husband's billions around like a shield against consequences. She believes, with every fiber of her entitled being, that she's untouchable. Her name, Victoria Ashford Sterling, wife of tech billionaire Marcus Sterling, and she's about to learn the hardest lesson of her privileged life. What Judge Frank Caprio delivers isn't just a sentence. It's a masterclass in justice. It's the kind of reality check that restores faith in the American legal system, the kind that proves, at least sometimes, that nobody, and we mean nobody, is above the law. If viewers have made it this far, they cannot miss what happens next, because what unfolds in this Providence courtroom will leave them speechless. Thursday morning, 10:30 a.m., Providence Municipal Court, Rhode Island. The bailiff's voice cuts through the quiet courtroom. The state of Rhode Island versus Victoria Ashford Sterling. The double doors swing open with theatrical timing. What walks through those doors isn't just a defendant. It's a statement, a declaration, a middle finger to every working-class person who's ever had to face consequences for their actions. Victoria Ashford Sterling enters like she's walking into her country club, not a court of law. The cream-colored Chanel suit hugging her frame costs more than 3 months of rent for the average American family. Her Hermes Birkin bag, casually dangling from the crook of her arm, carries a price tag of at least $50,000. Not a typo, $50,000. Diamond bracelets from Cartier catch the harsh fluorescent lighting with every dismissive wave of her manicured hand. Valentino sunglasses remain perched on her face. Inside, in a courthouse. As if the ordinary world's lighting offends her refined sensibilities. Behind her, struggling under the weight of Victoria's coat, purse, and leather portfolio, trails a young woman barely out of college. Presumably her personal assistant. Victoria doesn't acknowledge her existence. Not once. The girl might as well be furniture. As Victoria glides toward the defendant's table, she pulls out her phone and makes a call. In open court. While the bailiff is calling her case, her voice, loud and unbothered, echoes through the stunned courtroom. "Darling, I can't talk now. I'm dealing with this ridiculous legal theater. Just confirm with the caterer. We need the Belgian chocolate fountain, not the Swiss one. The Swiss was absolutely pedestrian at the Harrisons' party." She lets out a tinkling laugh. Condescending, amused, completely oblivious to the growing tension in the room. The gallery stares, mouths hanging open, disbelief written across every face. An elderly woman in the second row slowly shakes her head, her weathered hands gripping her purse tighter. A construction worker in the third row crosses his arms, his jaw clenched tight. Even the court reporter, who's seen everything in her 20 years on the job, pauses mid-keystroke to witness this display of breathtaking arrogance. At the bench sits Judge Frank Caprio. For those unfamiliar with the name, Judge Caprio isn't just any judge. He's a Rhode Island institution, a man known for his compassion, his wisdom, and his unwavering commitment to justice tempered with humanity. He's seen thousands of defendants walk through his courtroom, the scared, the remorseful, the defiant, the broken. But something about Victoria's entrance makes even his experienced eyes narrow. He watches silently as she finally reaches the defendant's table. She sets her phone down, screen up naturally, as if she might need to check it at any moment. Her lawyer, Martin Whitmore, a nervous-looking man in an expensive suit that screams corporate law firm, leans in to whisper something urgent in her ear. She waves him off like he's an annoying insect. Judge Caprio clears his throat. Firm. Authoritative. "Mrs. Ashford Sterling, welcome to my courtroom. Please silence your phone and give these proceedings your full attention." Victoria glances up as if noticing him for the first time. She doesn't silence her phone. Instead, She offers a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Cold, calculating. Your Honor, is that what I call you? I'm sure we can resolve this quickly. What's the damage? 5,010. My assistant can wire it right now. She gestures carelessly toward the young woman behind her, who looks like she wants the earth to swallow her whole. The courtroom falls completely silent. It's the kind of silence that feels physical, heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. Even the bailiff, a veteran who's witnessed countless disrespectful defendants, raises his eyebrows in shocked disbelief. Judge Caprio's expression doesn't change, but something shifts in his eyes. A sharpness, a steel that wasn't there before. Mrs. Ashford Sterling, he says with deliberate, dangerous calm. This is a court of law, not an auction house. You're here to answer serious charges, not to negotiate a transaction. Victoria lets out a small laugh. The kind that suggests she finds the entire situation beneath her, amusing in its absurdity. With respect, Your Honor, I think you're making this more complicated than it needs to be. My husband donates more to this city's infrastructure than this entire courthouse is worth. Surely we can approach this. She pauses, searching for the word, pragmatically. The gallery erupts. Whispered conversations. Shocked gasps. One woman audibly gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. A man in the back row says, loud enough for others to hear, "Did she just try to buy her way out?" Judge Caprio raises his hand slightly. The courtroom quiets instantly. His voice remains steady, but there's steel underneath now. Tempered, sharp. Mrs. Ashford Sterling, your husband's donations are generous, I'm sure. But they don't purchase immunity from the law. Now, let's proceed with why you're actually here. The bailiff steps forward, his voice clear and official. Mrs. Victoria Ashford Sterling, you are charged with the following. Count 1, leaving the scene of an accident. Count 2, failure to render aid. Count 3, attempted obstruction of justice. Count 4, intimidation of a witness. Victoria examines her manicured nails as the charges are read, occasionally glancing at her phone screen. Bored, disconnected, like this is an inconvenience, nothing more. Her lawyer shifts uncomfortably beside her, clearly aware that his client's behavior is making his job exponentially harder. When the bailiff finishes, Judge Caprio looks directly at Victoria. Mrs. Ashford Sterling, do you understand these charges? Victoria sighs dramatically. I understand that a minor parking mishap is being blown completely out of proportion. Judge Caprio's eyes narrow. A minor parking mishap. Is that how you describe it? Victoria shrugs, the gesture dripping with dismissiveness. I barely tapped another vehicle. These things happen in parking garages all the time. My car probably sustained more damage than theirs did. My Range Rover is a limited edition, you know. Judge Caprio opens a folder on his bench. Mrs. Ashford Sterling, are you aware of who was driving the vehicle you barely tapped? Victoria waves her hand vaguely. Some delivery person, I think. I don't really remember. It happened so fast, and I was late for a very important charity luncheon. The irony is not lost on the gallery. A woman rushing to a charity event while fleeing the scene of an accident she caused. Several people shake their heads in disgust. Judge Caprio's voice becomes firmer, harder. The person you hit was Maria Gonzalez, a 58-year-old hospice nurse. She was driving a borrowed vehicle, rushing to reach a dying patient who had specifically requested her presence. Victoria barely reacts. Instead, she turns to whisper something to her assistant about rescheduling a spa appointment. Judge Caprio continues, his patience clearly being tested. Miss Gonzalez suffered whiplash and bruised ribs from the impact. She missed 3 days of work, unpaid, because of her injuries. The patient she was trying to reach passed away before another nurse could arrive. The borrowed van she was driving sustained $2,800 in damage. The owner, a fellow nurse, cannot afford the repairs and has been without a vehicle for 2 weeks. Victoria finally looks up, but her expression shows more annoyance than concern. Your Honor, that's unfortunate, truly. But that's literally what insurance is for. I don't understand why we're being so dramatic about a fender bender. These situations resolve themselves through proper channels. I offered to handle it privately, but she refused to be reasonable. Judge Caprio leans forward slightly. You offered to handle it privately. Let's examine what that means. Bailiff, please display the security footage from the Eastgate parking structure. Incident timestamp, 11:42 a.m., Monday, April 15th. The monitors throughout the courtroom flicker to life. Black and white security footage. Grainy, but clear enough. Crystal clear, in fact. The timestamp in the corner reads 11:42:17 a.m. A white Range Rover, luxury SUV, top of the line, backs out of a parking space at considerable speed, far faster than is safe in a confined parking structure. The vehicle collides hard with the side of a blue van. The impact is forceful, violent, even. The van rocks visibly on its suspension. This isn't a gentle tap. This isn't a minor mishap. This is a collision that could seriously hurt someone. The Range Rover stops abruptly. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the driver's door opens. Victoria steps out. She walks around to examine the damage to her vehicle, running her hand along a scrape on the bumper. Her face, even in the grainy footage, shows clear irritation. Not concern for whoever might be hurt, just annoyance at the damage to her expensive car. Then the van's door opens. A woman, Maria Gonzalez, emerges slowly. One hand pressed to her ribs, her face contorted in obvious pain. She approaches Victoria, and though there's no audio, her body language speaks volumes. She's asking if Victoria is all right, informing her that she's hurt, being polite, professional, even in pain. The footage continues. Victoria reaches into her designer handbag and pulls out what is unmistakably a thick fold of cash. Bills. Lots of them. She holds it out toward Maria, who shakes her head and takes a step back. Victoria steps forward, pushing the money toward Maria more insistently, aggressively even. Maria shakes her head again, more firmly this time. She pulls out her phone. The moment Maria begins dialing, Victoria's demeanor changes completely. Her body language transforms. She shoves the money back into her purse, turns on her heel, and gets back into her Range Rover. While Maria is clearly on the phone, presumably with 911, Victoria drives away. She doesn't leave a note. She doesn't wait for police. She simply leaves an injured woman standing in a parking garage, holding her ribs in pain. The courtroom watches, in complete silence. When the footage ends, the quiet is deafening. Judge Caprio turns his gaze to Victoria. Still think it was just a minor mishap, Mrs. Ashford Sterling? Victoria shifts in her seat, her confidence wavering for the first time. But she recovers quickly. Your Honor, the footage doesn't show context. I was late for an extremely important charity luncheon benefiting children's literacy. I'm on the board. My absence would have been noticed and, frankly, embarrassing for the organization. I offered that woman a very generous cash settlement right there on the spot. $5,000. In cash. Do you know how many people would jump at that opportunity? But she refused. She made it complicated. She's the one who turned a simple accident into this circus. Judge Caprio's expression hardens. She made it complicated by calling the police after being injured. That's not complicated, Mrs. Ashford Sterling. That's called following the law. Victoria opens her mouth to respond, but Judge Caprio continues. And speaking of the law, let's discuss what happened next. Bailiff, please call our witness. A man in a security uniform enters the courtroom. He's in his mid-50s, with a weathered face and tired eyes that suggest he's worked long shifts for many years. The kind of man who's seen everything. The kind who takes his job seriously. He takes his position and is sworn in. The bailiff asks him to state his name for the record. Robert Chen. I'm the head of security at Eastgate Parking Structure. Have been for 12 years. Judge Caprio addresses him directly. Mr. Chen, you were on duty the morning of April 15th when this incident occurred. Yes, Your Honor. I responded when our cameras flagged the collision. Can you tell the court what you witnessed when you arrived at the scene? Robert Chen pulls out a small notepad. I arrived approximately 3 minutes after the impact. The injured party, Miss Gonzalez, was on the phone with emergency services. She was clearly in pain, holding her side. I approached to offer assistance and to get information for our incident report. What happened then? Mr. Chen glances briefly at Victoria before continuing. The woman who caused the accident, he points toward Victoria, had already left the scene. But Miss Gonzalez gave me the license plate number she'd managed to photograph before the vehicle departed. I radioed it into our office and pulled the security footage. Mr. Chen, did you have any interaction with Mrs. Ashford Sterling that day? Yes, Your Honor. She returned to the parking structure approximately 40 minutes later. I assume she realized leaving the scene was a mistake. When she came back, what did she say? Robert Chen's jaw tightened slightly. She approached my security station and asked if anyone had filed a report about the accident. I informed her that yes, the injured party had already spoken with police and that I had provided them with the security footage. Judge Caprio leans forward. How did Mrs. Ashford Sterling respond to that information? Mr. Chen takes a breath. She became very agitated. She told me I'd made a huge mistake. She said, and I wrote this down immediately after because I knew it was important. Do you know who my husband is? Marcus Sterling owns half this city. If you file that report, I'll have your job by morning. The courtroom erupts in murmurs, gasps, angry whispers. Victoria's face flushes red. That's a complete fabrication, she says loudly, her composure cracking. He's clearly lying for attention or money or whatever his angle is. Judge Caprio raises his hand for silence. Mrs. Ashford Sterling, you'll have a chance to respond. Mr. Chen, did anyone else witness this conversation? Yes, Your Honor. My colleague David Park was standing right next to me at the security desk. He heard everything. We both documented it in our incident report immediately after she left. And we also have audio from our security station. The judge nods slowly. Play the audio, please. There's a brief crackle of static. Then, Victoria's voice comes through, crystal clear. The audio quality is surprisingly good. You need to make that report disappear. Do you understand me? I offered that woman $5,000 cash to walk away. She refused, which was stupid on her part, but that's her problem. Now, you're compiling evidence like you're some kind of detective. You're a parking attendant. My husband's name is on buildings all over the city. One phone call from me and you'll be looking for work tomorrow. So I suggest you lose that footage and forget this ever happened. Do we understand each other? Robert Chen's voice responds, steady and professional. Ma'am, I can't do that. The report has already been filed with police. Then you just ended your career over a fender bender. Congratulations on your principles. I hope they keep you warm when you're unemployed. The audio clicks off. The silence in the courtroom is absolute, suffocating. Every eye turns to Victoria, whose face has gone from red to pale. Her hands grip the edge of the table, knuckles white. Judge Caprio's voice cuts through the quiet like a blade. Mrs. Ashford Sterling, do you still maintain that Mr. Chen is fabricating his testimony? Victoria's lawyer quickly stands. Your Honor, my client was under extreme stress. She'd just been in an accident. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. Judge Caprio doesn't break his gaze from Victoria. I asked your client a question, counselor. Mrs. Ashford Sterling, do you deny that this is your voice on the recording? Victoria's mouth opens and closes several times before words finally come out. That recording is taken out of context. I was upset. I'd just been in an accident and this security guard was treating me like a criminal when I was trying to do the right thing by coming back. Judge Caprio's expression doesn't soften. You came back 40 minutes after fleeing the scene, and instead of taking responsibility, you threatened a man's livelihood because he was doing his job. That's your version of doing the right thing. Victoria stands abruptly. Her chair scrapes loudly against the floor. This is absurd. You're treating me like I'm some kind of dangerous criminal over a parking lot bump. Do you have any idea what my husband has done for the city? The Sterling Foundation has donated millions. We employ thousands of people. We fund scholarships, community programs, hospital wings. And you're going to crucify me because some nurse who probably makes $40,000 a year wants her 15 minutes of fame. The courtroom explodes in reaction. People gasp. Others shake their heads in disgust. One man in the gallery stands up, pointing at Victoria, his face red with anger before the bailiff gestures for him to sit down. Judge Caprio's voice cuts through the chaos like thunder. Mrs. Ashford Sterling, sit down, now. Victoria remains standing, her voice rising even higher. I will not. This is a witch hunt. You're punishing me for being successful. You're making an example of me because my last name opens doors that yours never will. This entire proceeding is biased against people of means. Judge Caprio stands slowly. The simple act of him rising to his feet somehow commands more authority than any gavel strike. His voice becomes dangerously quiet. Bailiff, if Mrs. Ashford Sterling does not sit down in the next 3 seconds, add contempt of court to her charges, and prepare to remand her into custody until she can demonstrate basic respect for these proceedings. The words hang in the air, like a guillotine blade. Victoria's lawyer grabs her arm and frantically whispers in her ear. For a moment it seems like she might continue her tirade. But something in Judge Caprio's unwavering stare finally penetrates her armor of entitlement. She sits down with an exaggerated huff, crossing her arms like a petulant child. Judge Caprio remains standing for a moment longer before returning to his seat. Before I make my ruling, he says, his tone measured and deliberate, I'm going to hear from several people who wanted to speak today. I don't usually allow this, but given Mrs. Ashford Sterling's claims about her character and contributions to society, I think it's important to hear additional perspectives. The first person called forward is a young man in his early 20s, wearing a valet uniform. He approaches nervously, clearly uncomfortable with public speaking. He states his name as Christopher Mendez and explains that he's worked as a valet at the Riverside Country Club for 5 years. Judge Caprio asks him why he wanted to speak today. Christopher takes a deep breath. Your Honor, I've parked Mrs. Sterling's car at least twice a week for 5 years. In all that time, she's never once said thank you. Not once. She's never looked me in the eye. She's never acknowledged that I exist except to complain. Last month, I was helping an elderly club member into their vehicle first because they had a walker and needed assistance. Mrs. Sterling arrived and had to wait maybe 90 seconds. She reported me to my supervisor for taking too long and being inefficient. I almost lost my job. I have a daughter at home. That job feeds my family, and she almost took it away because she had to wait 90 seconds. Victoria scoffs loudly. That's completely irrelevant to this case. That has nothing to do with a traffic accident. Judge Caprio's gaze shifts to her. It has everything to do with character. Mrs. Ashford Sterling. Continue, Mr. Mendez. Christopher nods. I just wanted the court to know that this isn't someone who made one mistake. This is who she is. She treats people like we're invisible unless we're in her way. Then we're problems to be eliminated. He returns to his seat. Judge Caprio calls the next witness. A middle-aged woman in a simple dress comes forward. She identifies herself as Patricia Ruiz, former household staff member for the Sterling family. "How long did you work for them?" Judge Caprio asks. "3 years, Your Honor. I was let go last December." "Can you tell the court why you were let go?" Patricia's voice wavers slightly, but she continues. "I asked for Christmas Eve off because my daughter was having surgery the day after Christmas. I wanted to be with her. Mrs. Sterling told me that the holidays were their busiest social season, and that my family obligations were not her problem. When I took the day off anyway to be with my daughter, she fired me. She called me replaceable. Those were her exact words. You're replaceable." I'd worked for that family for 3 years. I'd missed birthdays, school plays, family gatherings to accommodate their schedule. And when I needed one day, I was replaceable. Victoria shifts uncomfortably, her face flushing with anger and embarrassment. These are disgruntled former employees. They're clearly looking for revenge or a payout. This is character assassination, not evidence. Judge Caprio's expression remains unchanged. "No, Mrs. Ashford Sterling. This is character evidence. There's a difference." The third witness is a woman in her 40s who owns a small boutique in downtown Providence. She introduces herself as Ellen Hoffman and explains that her store specializes in high-end designer clothing. Judge Caprio asks why she felt compelled to testify today. Ellen takes a steadying breath. "Last year, Mrs. Sterling purchased over $8,000 worth of clothing from my store for a charity gala. She wore every single piece to the event, with the tags carefully hidden inside the garments. The next morning, she returned everything, every single item, demanding a full refund. When I explained our policy, that worn items cannot be returned, she threatened to destroy my business. She said she'd tell everyone in her social circle that my store sold counterfeit goods. She said she'd post reviews online calling me a fraud. She said she'd make sure I never sold another dress in this city." Judge Caprio leans forward. "What did you do?" Ellen's voice cracks slightly. "I gave her the refund. I couldn't afford to lose my business. I have 3 employees who depend on those jobs. My mother co-signed the loan for my store. I couldn't risk everything over $8,000 even though I knew she'd worn those clothes, and I'd never be able to resell them. So she stole from you, essentially." Ellen nods slowly. "Yes, Your Honor, she did, and she smiled the whole time." Victoria jumps to her feet again, her composure completely shattered. "This is outrageous. These people are lying. They're coordinating their stories to take me down. My lawyer will sue every single one of them for defamation." Judge Caprio's voice becomes ice cold. "Sit down, Mrs. Ashford Sterling. This is your last warning." Victoria sits, but her hands are shaking now. Whether from rage or fear is unclear. Judge Caprio looks down at the documents before him, then back up at Victoria. Her lawyer looks like he wants to disappear into the floor. The gallery is completely silent, everyone leaning forward to hear what comes next. "Mrs. Ashford Sterling," Judge Caprio begins, his voice carrying the weight of decades on the bench. "You came into my courtroom today, believing that your wealth made you untouchable. You laughed at these proceedings. You tried to buy your way out of responsibility. You insulted an injured woman who dedicates her life to caring for the dying. You threatened working people whose only crime was doing their jobs with integrity. And through it all, you've shown absolutely no remorse, no empathy, and no understanding of why you're here." Victoria opens her mouth to speak, but Judge Caprio raises his hand. "I'm not finished. For the past hour, I've listened to you dismiss everyone around you as beneath your consideration. The nurse you injured, the security guard you threatened, the valet who parks your car, the woman who cleaned your home, the small business owner whose livelihood you held hostage. In your world, these people are invisible unless they inconvenience you. Then they become obstacles to be removed with money or threats, or your husband's name. He pauses, letting his words settle over the room like snow. But here's what you don't understand, Mrs. Ashford Sterling. In this courtroom, your money means nothing. Your last name means nothing. Your husband's donations mean nothing. What matters is the law, and you broke it. What matters is human decency, and you've shown none. Another pause. The courtroom holds its breath. Now I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're not going to write a check and walk away. You're not going to have your lawyer make this disappear. You're going to face real consequences, perhaps for the first time in your privileged life. And those consequences are going to teach you something that your wealth has allowed you to avoid learning. That actions have consequences, that other people matter, and that service is not something you buy at a gala. It's something you do with your own two hands. Victoria's face has gone completely pale. Her earlier defiance has evaporated, replaced by something that might be fear. Or might be the first glimmer of understanding. Judge Caprio continues. For leaving the scene of an accident and failing to render aid, I'm fining you $15,000 to be paid directly to Maria Gonzalez for her medical expenses, lost wages, and the damage to the vehicle she was borrowing. Victoria exhales slightly, as if relieved that it's just money. But Judge Caprio isn't finished. Your driving privileges are suspended for 18 months, effective immediately. You will not operate any vehicle during this period. Victoria's eyes widen. 18 months? How am I supposed to? Judge Caprio cuts her off. Public transportation, Mrs. Ashford Sterling. The same buses and trains used by the invisible people you've spent your life looking through. You're about to become very familiar with how the other 99% lives. He pauses. But we're not done yet. The courtroom leans forward as one. You will serve 400 hours of community service. But not the kind where you write another check to a charity and show up for a photo opportunity. Real service. You will work at Providence General Hospital as a volunteer aide, assisting the hospice care team. The same team that Maria Gonzalez works with. You will help patients. You will clean bedpans. You will hold the hands of dying people who have no one else. You will see what real service looks like, what compassion looks like, what humanity looks like. Victoria's mouth falls open. Additionally, Judge Caprio continues, you will attend mandatory empathy training and anger management classes twice weekly for 6 months. And you will write a personal handwritten letter of apology to every person who testified here today. Not typed, not dictated to your assistant, handwritten, by you. And those letters will be reviewed by this court before they're delivered. The judge's voice softens slightly, but remains firm. Mrs. Ashford Sterling, I'm giving you a choice. You can appeal this sentence, drag this out, spend hundreds of thousands on lawyers, and ultimately face the same or worse consequences. Or you can accept this opportunity to become a better human being, to learn what you should have learned a long time ago. That money doesn't make you superior. It makes you responsible. Responsible for treating others with dignity. Responsible for using your privilege to help, not harm. He looks at her directly. I genuinely hope you choose the latter. Because the person you are right now, that person, is not someone to be proud of. But the person you could become, that person might actually deserve the privilege they've been given. Victoria sits in stunned silence. Tears, whether of rage, humiliation, or perhaps genuine emotion, begin to stream down her face. Do you accept this sentence, or do you wish to appeal? After a long moment, Victoria's voice comes out barely above a whisper. I accept, Your Honor. Good. Court is adjourned. The gavel falls. As the courtroom empties, Maria Gonzalez, the hospice nurse who started this whole case, sits quietly in the gallery. A small smile crosses her face. Not vindictive, not cruel. Just satisfied. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the system works the way it's supposed to. Sometimes, justice isn't about revenge. It's about accountability, about teaching, about transformation. And sometimes the wealthy and powerful learn that their money can't buy everything. It can't buy immunity, it can't buy respect, and it certainly can't buy their way out of consequences in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. This is the story that proves nobody is above the law. This is the reality check that restored faith in the American justice system. This is what happens when arrogance meets accountability. And this is why Judge Frank Caprio is a legend.